Are you looking for a quick, fun quilt pattern that you can put together quickly and easily? Beaded Curtain is for you, and today I'd like to tell you the stitch story behind this quilt. This particular version was made for the March Scrapbuster Challenge that Island Batik asked its ambassadors to put together. So I took a variety of Island Batik blenders and foundations fabrics to make this yellow and turquoise version of Beaded Curtain. The original version was made with pinks and purples because they were my daughter's favorite colors at the time, and I used a jelly roll pack that I had on hand. So that's how the original came to be. I was sketching on the airplane and thought, what a fun way to use the classic granny square layout, modified it to use 2.5-inch strips, and of course any quilt is customizable based on your personal fabric choices. I just think this particular quilt makes a great gift because you can use the recipient's favorite colors, you can choose school colors, graduation's coming up, you could use more masculine colors for Father's Day, and it's a great size project. My pattern finishes at about 50 by 58, so that's in that lap category, and you can certainly add rows if you wanted a larger quilt. If we haven't met yet, I'm Andy, and this is True Blue Quilts, a place to enjoy, experiment, and excel as you quilt. And I'm so glad you have joined us as we take a look at the Beaded Curtain pattern. Let's take a closer look. I said this was sewn together with strip sets. So we have the main block here. The granny square is what we refer to this as. So we have one strip set on the end that has the background colors and just one of the square colors. And then we have another one that is background, color 1, color 2, color 1, and background. So we've made a larger strip set. And then the center of the block is made just with the two colors that you're using, alternating color 1 with color 2. And then you repeat the first two strip sets to build the block there. I put background sashing so that all kind of blends together and those granny squares look like they're floating on that background. And then I alternated, instead of like really defining the block, I just put this accent strip in that alternates with the two primary colors that I used in the block. You could throw in some background squares there, and I did that in the original pattern. I alternated the pink fabrics with the background fabrics instead of highlighting the two colors there. So just a little bit different. There's always ways to interpret a pattern and change the colors a little bit and really make it your own style. Taking a look at the back of the Beaded Curtain pattern and sample quilt, you can see that I just made an enlarged block. So I started with the 9 patch of the primary focus colors, and then I filled in with the extra squares to make that granny square block in as large size as I could with the fabric that I had on hand. This was a scrapbuster project, so I had to, modify the measurements there. So I got my center square done and then just added extra background fabric to bring the backing up to the required size. And I have tips about making pieced backings, and I will link to that video right up here. You can also see the different quilting motifs that I used. They show up really nicely on the back because I match my thread color to the quilt top. So then all the stitches show up on the back, which I personally like. So everybody has their own preferences. Some people like to use a solid color that matches the backing fabric, but I really enjoy looking at the different stitching motifs. And my long arm quilting is all hand guided, so you do see some wobbles there. My curves aren't perfectly circular, but this is a handmade project, and you can see my hands and my stitching there in all its imperfect glory. So let's take a look at how these designs are drawn. I'll take you to the whiteboard. Okay, here we are at my whiteboard, and it's in my laundry room, so that's why you see this kind of weird door off to the side. But I've drawn the basic block for the beaded curtain, and I wanted to show you the free motion quilting that I did on this quilt. So in the blue blocks that kind of make this outer edge of the granny square, I just did some simple echoed circles. So I picked my starting point and I traveled to the center, and then I just looped around twice. And then I was able to travel to the corner of the next block and repeat that echoed loop or teardrop. Whoops, I went up the, where am I going here? Out to that. Okay, yeah, get my thoughts straight since I don't have the quilt in front of me with all the correct colors. It's easier to follow when you are working on your quilt that has all the blocks colored correctly. So then I had to decide what to do in that center square. And after stitching a few of these, I realized I didn't want to backtrack just over this one seam all that many times. So I tried to remember as I was coming down this last seam to go into the middle. And I just decided on a simple spiral in and out. And then I kind of connected up to the top, and then I came back so that I could finish that single loop in that bottom corner. So you can try different elements there, whatever you want to do to fill in that center square. So that was all done with the teal colored thread. Then I had to go back and fill in the yellow squares. And for those, I just did a simple continuous curve around those corners and then fill in with that missing bump. It gives you a nice circular feel that balances out all the straight lines and squares in the quilt. For the background areas, I just did a simple wavy line, curvy meander that I was able to fill in all those areas and travel around the edge of the block. This was black thread on a black background, so it blended perfectly and gave me some really nice texture. The other portion of the beaded curtain quilt is the row of focus fabric colored squares. And for this, I wanted to give it a woven appearance. So using one color at a time, I just stitched some parallel lines. And then I traveled to the next section and quilted those parallel lines again. And I did this all freehand, so there's some wobbles in there, but for that short distance, you can guide your machine pretty straight without a ruler. I switched thread colors and came back and added the vertical lines. And the marker is making wider lines there. I didn't get them spaced, but you get the idea of how I was stitching that. For the background colors on the top and the bottom of each of those, I decided to fill that in with ribbon candy. Very easy design, just has a fat curve at the top and the bottom, and then you bring your stitching line back in to make that opposite narrow section. So we start with our fat and then go narrow, fat, narrow, right into fat. So you're angling back and forth, alternating between those wide areas and those narrow areas. Just gives some lovely texture to your quilt. And those are the free motion quilting designs that I used on my beaded curtain quilt. I hope you enjoyed the stitch story behind Beaded Curtain. You can download a digital copy of this pattern in the True Blue Quilts shop, and I will link to that website in the video description. If you are looking for more free motion quilting designs, take a look at this playlist, Classic Blocks and Free Motion Quilting. There are 30 different free motion quilting motifs and classic quilt blocks for you to mix and match, and I can't wait to see what you do with that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.